When 17-year-old Amari Chen was humiliated by his classmates who ripped off his braids in the school cafeteria, he thought it would be another day of enduring racism alone. But the next morning, when two Secret Service agents appeared at his locker, escorting him through the halls like a presidential heir, whispers filled the air, and no one, not even Amari himself, knew why. If you're ready to uncover truths that challenge everything we think we know about power and prejudice, subscribe now. This is more than a story. It's a movement for justice. Amari sat alone at a corner table in the cafeteria, his tray pushed slightly to one side. The room buzzed with its usual chaos, laughter, clattering trays, and snippets of conversation, but none of it reached him. His fingers traced the edges of his braids absently, a habit he'd picked up when deep in thought. They weren't just hair. They were a connection to his grandmother, who had spent hours weaving them into intricate patterns every summer. "These braids are your roots," she'd told him once. "Their strength. Don't let anyone take that from you." He didn't. Noticed the group approaching until their shadows fell across his table. Carson Blake stood at the front, flanked by three others. Their smirks cut through the noise like knives. Carson's voice was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Look at this guy still rocking those dreads like he's some kind of warrior or something. What's wrong, Chen? You think you're too good for us?" Amari froze, his hand instinctively moving to shield his braids. He knew better than to engage. Silence had always been his armor, but today it felt heavier than usual. One of Carson's friends leaned forward, grabbing Amari's backpack and spilling its contents onto the floor. Papers scattered everywhere, and before Amari could react, another boy lunged toward him. A sharp tug sent pain shooting through his scalp as a handful of braids came loose in the attacker's grip. The laughter around them grew louder, crueler. Someone shouted, "Yeah, teach him a lesson." Others joined in, their jeers blending into a cacophony of hate. Amari clenched his fists under the table, his jaw tightening. He wanted to scream, to fight back, but years of watching his father endure similar humiliations kept him rooted in place. Instead, he stared straight ahead, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing him break. Finally, a teacher arrived, shouting for everyone to stop. By then, it was too late. The damage was done. Amari grabbed what remained of his belongings and left without a word, his head bowed low. As he walked out, he caught sight of himself in a hallway mirror. His reflection stared back, bruised and disheveled, but his eyes burned with determination. "I won't show weakness again," he promised silently. At home, Amari found solace in the familiar creak of the wooden floorboards as he entered the kitchen. Elijah, his father, sat at the table reading the newspaper, glasses perched on the edge of his nose. When he looked up and saw Amari's face, his expression softened. "What happened?" he asked, setting the paper aside. Amari hesitated, then recounted the events of the day, his voice barely above a whisper. Elijah listened intently, nodding occasionally but saying nothing until Amari finished. Then he sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Son, I've seen men twice my size crumble, under the weight of people trying to make them feel small. Racism isn't just about words or actions, it's about power. They want you to believe you don't deserve respect, but you do. Always remember that." Nia, Amari's younger sister, appeared in the doorway, her wide eyes filled with concern. He rushed to his side, wrapping her arms around him. "Don't listen to them, Ari. You're amazing just the way you are." Her voice carried the conviction only a sibling could offer. "One day I'll be a journalist, and I'll tell the whole world how strong you are. Just wait." Later that evening, Amari retreated to his room, scrolling through his phone to distract himself. Notifications flooded his screen. A video someone had posted of the cafeteria incident. At first, he braced himself for ridicule, expecting comments mocking his appearance or calling him weak. But instead, the caption read, "Teen hero about to change America." Confused, he clicked on the link. The video showed snippets of the attack, but it also captured something else, the quiet dignity in Amari's refusal to retaliate. Comment after comment praised his restraint, calling him brave and resilient. Amari stared at the glowing screen, unsure how to feel. Was this real? Could something so painful actually lead to something meaningful? For the first time since the incident, a flicker of hope sparked within him. Maybe there was a way to turn this moment into something bigger, not just for himself, but for others like him. What if, he murmured aloud, his voice trailing off. Nia peeked into his room, curiosity lighting up her face. What if what? She asked, stepping inside. What if we can use this? Not for revenge, but to show people what happens. When they try to tear someone down, maybe it's not just about me anymore. Nia grinned, her excitement contagious. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Imagine all the kids who'll see this and realize they don't have to stay silent. Either, this could change everything, Ari. For the first time in days, Amari allowed himself to smile. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Amari sat in the quiet office, his hands clenched tightly together. Malcolm leaned back in his chair, speaking with a calm authority that felt more condescending than comforting. Listen, Amari, Malcolm said, his tone measured but firm. This situation is bigger than you realize. You need to let the system handle it. Trust me, I've been doing this for years. Amari's voice trembled as he responded, This isn't just about politics. It's about what happened to me. About kids like me who face this every day. How does staying silent help anyone? Malcolm sighed, brushing off Amari's frustration with a dismissive wave of his hand. Justice takes time. Right now, your job is to stay out of the spotlight and let the adults manage this. You'll thank me later. That night, Amari couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. Sitting on the couch, he heard muffled voices drifting from the kitchen. He moved closer, careful not to be seen, and caught fragments of Malcolm's conversation. Yes, Senator Blake, Malcolm was saying, pacing near the counter. If we downplay the incident now, public interest will fade. Just give me a little more time to rein him in. Amari's breath hitched. Senator Blake, the father of Carson, the boy who led the attack, was working with Malcolm to silence him. His own uncle was part of the problem, trading favors to protect powerful people. At school, the tension only grew worse. News outlets had picked up the story, spinning it in every possible direction. Some called Amari a victim of systemic racism, while others labeled him an opportunist chasing fame. The division spilled into classrooms and hallways. Students whispered behind his back or avoided him altogether. Teachers acted awkward around him, unsure how to navigate the controversy. Even Principal Hargrove seemed distant, her earlier protests forgotten. One afternoon, Amari received a text from an unknown number. It read, Hi Amari, I'm Priya Mathur. I've been following your story. Can we talk? He hesitated, unsure whether to trust another stranger, but curiosity got the better of him, and he replied cautiously. A few minutes later, his phone rang. On the other end, Priya's voice was warm yet professional. Amari, I know this has been overwhelming, she began, but I want to help you tell your truth. Not the version everyone else wants to sell, but yours. What do you say? For the first time in days, Amari felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe someone outside his tangled web of betrayal could truly understand. But then came another blow. Jamal, Amari's best friend since middle school, betrayed him. Desperate to fit in with Carson's group, Jamal leaked private details about Amari's family connections to them. When Amari found out, he confronted Jamal in the parking lot after school. How? Could you? Amari demanded, his voice shaking with anger. I trusted you. Jamal looked away, guilt etched across his face. I didn't mean for it to go this far. They promised they'd leave me alone if I helped. Amari turned and walked away, his chest tight with hurt. Another person he cared about had chosen sides against him. The accusations and scrutiny became relentless. Every comment section online was a minefield of hate and misunderstanding. Amari spent hours scrolling through them, each cruel remark chipping away at his resolve. Yet amidst the chaos, he began to see something else, a chance to take control of his narrative. If people were watching, maybe he could use this moment to inspire others facing similar injustices. During dinner one night, Elijah noticed the shift in Amari's demeanor. "What's going on in that head of yours?" he asked gently. "I'm done being afraid," Amari said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "If they want to make this a spectacle, fine. But I'll decide what kind of spectacle it is." Elijah nodded slowly, pride softening the lines on his face. "Good. Make them see the truth." Watching Malcolm negotiate with Senator Blake opened Amari's eyes to the deeper layers of systemic bias. Racism wasn't always overt. It thrived in subtle negotiations, power plays, and deals struck behind closed doors. Breaking these cycles wouldn't be easy, but Amari knew it was necessary. By the end of the week, Amari had started envisioning a path forward. With Priya's help, he began drafting a plan, not just to expose the truth, but to turn his pain into purpose. Senator Blake stood at the podium, his polished demeanor masking the desperation beneath. Cameras flashed as he addressed the nation, his voice dripping with accusation. "This so-called incident is nothing more than a fabrication, a calculated attempt by Amari Chen and his family to exploit racism for personal gain. Their political connections have been used to manipulate public opinion, but I assure you, the truth will come out." The words hit Amari like a punch to the gut. He sat in his living room, watching the press conference unfold on TV, his hands clenched into fists. The accusations spread quickly, amplified by news outlets eager to capitalize on controversy. Even his teachers began casting sideways glances at him, their doubt palpable. Students avoided him in the hallways, whispering behind his back. One girl muttered loud enough for him to hear, "Maybe he really did make it all up." Amari felt the walls closing in. Every step forward seemed to pull him 2 steps back. Was this how it ended? With lies overshadowing the truth? He sank onto his bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if justice was truly possible. But Priya Mathur wasn't ready to give up. She spent hours poring over security footage from the school cafeteria, frame by frame, until she found what she needed. The video clearly showed Carson leading the attack, yanking out Amari's braids while others cheered him on. Text messages recovered from Carson's phone revealed premeditated plans to humiliate Amari, labeling him as too full of himself and deserving of a lesson. Priya didn't waste time. She published her expose late that night, knowing the timing would maximize its impact. By morning, the article had gone viral. Social media erupted with outrage. Protesters gathered outside Roosevelt High School, holding signs that read, "Justice for Amari" and "Stop bullying, start believing." Chants echoed through the streets. "Amari, Amari!" For the first time in days, Amari allowed himself a small smile. Maybe the tide was turning. Few days later, Amari found himself seated across from a talk show host, live on national television. The bright lights made his skin prickle, but he forced himself to stay calm. When the host asked about the bullying incident, Amari took a deep breath and revealed something no one expected. "My mother," he began, his voice steady despite the weight of the memories, "was once a whistleblower who exposed corruption involving Senator Blake years ago. Her death was ruled an accident at the time, but now, I can't help but wonder." The room fell silent. Viewers watched in stunned disbelief as Amari recounted details about his mother's work and the suspicious circumstances surrounding her passing. The revelation sent shockwaves across the country. Public opinion shifted dramatically. People saw Amari not just as a victim, but as someone carrying on his mother's fight for justice. Senator Blake panicked. In a desperate bid to silence Amari, he reached out to Malcolm, offering political favors in exchange for ensuring Amari dropped the issue. Malcolm hesitated, torn between loyalty to his family and the allure of power. But when Blake pressed harder, Malcolm caved, agreeing to negotiate terms. What Blake didn't know was that Amari had recorded their conversation. That night, Amari uploaded the audio online, letting the world hear Malcolm admit to accepting bribes. Within hours, the recording went viral, The backlash was immediate and devastating. Senator Blake's reputation crumbled under the weight of his deceit, while Malcolm faced calls for his resignation. As the dust settled, Amari reflected on everything that had happened. Just weeks ago, he'd been sitting alone in the cafeteria, humiliated and broken. Now he stood tall, having exposed the truth and inspired countless others to speak up. It wasn't revenge, it was empowerment. Authorities finally took action. Carson was expelled, and an investigation into Senator Blake's past dealings began. While it couldn't undo the pain Amari endured, it marked a turning point toward accountability. Schools across the country started adopting anti-bullying programs inspired by Amari's story, and students began embracing their identities without fear. In the quiet moments afterward, Amari realized something profound. True strength didn't come from fighting back. It came from exposing the truth and inspiring others to do the same. His journey wasn't just about him anymore. It was about every person who had ever felt silenced or dismissed because of who they were. And in that realization, Amari found hope, not just for himself, but for the future. The resignation of Senator Blake dominated headlines for days. His once impeccable reputation was reduced to rubble as the scandal consumed his career. Carson, too, faced consequences, expelled from school and ostracized by peers who had once cheered him on. The cafeteria attackers were charged with assault, their actions finally acknowledged as criminal. Yet, as Amari scrolled through the news updates, a hollow ache lingered in his chest. Justice felt incomplete, like a puzzle missing its final piece. Uncle Malcolm's arrest hit hardest. When federal agents came to take him away, Amari stood frozen at the doorway, watching the man he'd once admired being led out in handcuffs. Malcolm glanced back. Shame etched into his face, but said nothing. That silence spoke volumes. It wasn't just betrayal. It was abandonment. Amari spent hours afterward sitting alone in his room, staring at an old photo of his mother and uncle together. "Why did you choose this path?" he whispered, tears streaming down his cheeks. But even in his grief, something inside him hardened, not with bitterness, but with resolve. He vowed to honor his mother's legacy, no matter what it cost him. Naya found him there later, curled up on the floor, surrounded by memories. She didn't say anything at first, just sat beside him and held his hand. After a while, she broke the quiet. "We can do something good with all this," she said softly. "Something Mom would have been proud of." Her words sparked an idea. Over the next few weeks, Amari and Nia poured their energy into creating Braids of Resilience, a campaign aimed at empowering young people to embrace their cultural identities despite adversity. They organized workshops, shared stories online, and partnered with schools to foster open conversations about race and heritage. Students responded eagerly, many saying they finally felt seen and valued. For the first time in months, Amari allowed himself to feel hope, not just for himself, but for others like him. The impact rippled outward. Schools across the country began adopting anti-bullying programs inspired by Amari's story. Teachers incorporated lessons on diversity, resilience, and systemic injustice into their curriculums, ensuring that future generations wouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past. Amari became a symbol, a quiet force of dignity and strength. News outlets featured him alongside other activists, hailing him as a voice for change. Yet he remained grounded, deflecting praise with humility. "This isn't about me," he told one interviewer. "It's about everyone who's ever been told they don't belong." In private moments, though, the weight of everything pressed down on him. He thought often of his mother, wondering if she'd be proud of how far he'd come, or if she'd grieve for the fractured relationships and sacrifices along the way. One evening, sitting alone in the kitchen, he traced the edges of her favorite cookbook, now worn with use. "I miss you," he murmured, "but I'll keep going for you." Nia, meanwhile, stepped fully into her role as a budding journalist. Her articles exposed injustices in ways that resonated deeply with readers. Together, she and Amari formed a powerful sibling duo, each amplifying the other's work. You inspire people to act, Nia told him one night, and I make sure the world hears their voices. Their partnership became a beacon of hope, proving that unity could overcome division. Then came the letter. It arrived unexpectedly, tucked among bills and junk mail. The handwriting was unfamiliar, shaky, yet deliberate. Inside, a single page bore a message that sent chills down Amari's spine. I saw what happened to your mother that night. It wasn't an accident. If you want answers, look closer at Senator Blake's network. There's more to uncover. Amari read it over and over, his mind racing. Who was this woman? How much did she know? And why had she waited so long to speak? Questions swirled, but one thing was clear. His fight wasn't over. This revelation reignited a fire within him, a determination to dig deeper, to expose every layer of corruption tied to his mother's death. He called Nia immediately. We're not done, he said firmly, not yet. As weeks turned into months, Amari reflected on how far he'd come. From the boy who sat silently in the cafeteria, humiliated and broken, to the man standing tall against those who sought to silence him, he had transformed. His braids once, a target of ridicule, now symbolized strength and resilience, the same strength his grandmother had spoken of years ago. His journey wasn't just personal, it was universal, a testament to the enduring power of family, heritage, and courage. Through his actions, Amari flipped the script entirely. Those who had tried to oppress him were now held accountable, their roles reversed. Redemption came not only for him, but also for countless others inspired by his example. People began speaking out, challenging systems of injustice in ways they never had before. Change was slow, messy, and imperfect, but it was happening. Looking ahead, Amari saw hope, not just for himself, but for every person who had ever been dismissed or devalued because of who they were. By embracing his identity and refusing to stay silent, he paved the way for a brighter, more equitable future. His story reminded the world that while justice might be slow, resilience could spark transformative change. And as long as there were people willing to stand up and speak out, the fight would continue. Creating meaningful content like this requires significant time and effort, from in-depth research to careful writing and revisions. If this story resonated with you, we kindly invite you to engage by liking, commenting, or sharing it. Each action makes a real difference. Subscribing allows us to continue producing impactful work that reaches even more people. Your support helps amplify these important messages and keeps this kind of storytelling alive. Thank you for standing with us and being part of something meaningful. Together, we can continue sharing stories that inspire and create change.